Very, very important training for three reasons. Number one, people that are not ethical condemn themselves to a painful retirement. I started working 44 years ago. I left university in the mid 70s, so at least I've done some work or another for the last 44 years. So they are, once you're over 65, they call you an old man. And so I'm in retirement. I can tell you one of the embarrassing things is for your grandchild to ask you, Wuka, where did you get this? And you know that you got it corruptly. How do you tell your grandchild I'm corrupt? My friend, if you don't live an ethical life, you condemn yourself to a life in retirement that will be very, 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 very painful. If you live a clean life, you may be rich or poor in old age, but you feel proud of everything you have, proud of your stories. The older you become, the more people you can tell stories, and you are proud about them. And you live a life of joy as you seek to influence younger people, and you have evidence in what you actually did. So it's good. I'm talking to many people who might be, I'm not for sure, below 40. And it's time you can create, if you're going to retire at 60, you still have 20 years to erase any unethical behavior you have had. So that now you can create a CV for your grandchildren, something you can share. And I thought that this is a very important thing. But number two, reason why it is important to go through this training is because Transparency International has kept emphasizing that Kenya is irredeemably corrupt. So corrupt, there are very few countries in the world that can give us any competition. It therefore means if you choose the way of integrity, the way of being ethical, you take a lonely journey. But in a training like this, you have somebody telling you, don't worry, keep at it. Or you have somebody older than you like me who can tell you, yes, I've gone through it, I've faced that and the other. And it gives you courage. So it's important once in a while to come back, even for ethical people, to give each other courage to face the challenges that are there in the nation because of the state of our corruption levels. But thirdly and importantly, to meet other people who are ethical helps you to know you are not alone, not just feel encouraged to practice, but to know that it's untrue. You know, there's a kind of a general feeling that all business people are corrupt. In fact, there's a Kikuyu saying, you'll just pardon me to say it in Kikuyu, I'll interpret it into English, that says, Fuduwa mano kenyuthi. In English, all business people are liars, except the one who cuts your hair. The implication is whether you go to repair your car or you go, whatever you do, all those people you deal with who give service will cheat you, except the one who cuts your hair. Because the one who cuts your hair, once he starts on your head, he cannot leave it half done. Of course, that's another way of just stating the fact that we are corrupt. So can you then see that when you live a corrupt-free life, you are unique, which is my final point. It makes you so unique. No organization would want to lose you. Because some other people may be even brighter than you, more professional than you. But once they cannot be trusted, you don't want them to be with you. By the way, even corrupt organizations do not want to employ corrupt people. Thieves are willing to steal from everybody, but they don't want anybody to steal from them. So it's important to understand that this becomes a very, very important activity we are doing this afternoon. And we don't have enough time. And since I believe in people participating, I want us to use the chat room, each one of us to share one example of when, don't say I'm the one, but an example of somebody, that somebody could be you, who was tempted and overcame a temptation to be corrupt, a temptation to be unethical. And then I'm going to read them. So just write it down so that I don't have to read your name for you to give us your story. It will be faster for me to read. So can you write one story? We want to remove the idea that everybody is corrupt. Give us examples of people that were tempted to be unethical, but they actually turned out and overcame the temptation. They were not unethical. Let me give you my example as you write yours. I left the university, like I told you, in the mid-1970s. When I say the university, nowadays, you are not asked which university. Kenya, I don't want university. And I worked for a parastatal bank. And they insisted that 2/3 of our money would be paid as salary, 1/3 would be paid as house allowance, and that 1/3 you could not get unless you could produce evidence that you are renting a house. So you came with a receipt. Now, obviously, it was difficult to get a house even in the 1970s, a good house. So I stayed with my sister, and I looked for a house 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. I wasn't getting any house. Until one of my friends told me, "What's wrong with you, Nganga? You must be very foolish. You don't have to get a house. All you need," I was working in an organization where I was on the 18th floor. That time it was one of the highest buildings in Nairobi. And he said, "Just walk down." Do you remember the guy who sells newspapers to us? He'll give you a receipt. You fill whatever you want. Give it to personnel manager. Those days were not called HR, they were called personnel manager. And as long as you give that receipt, from then onwards, he enters into the computer the fact that you are in a house, you'll be getting your house allowance. How can you lose 1/3 of your total income to the bank? They are not after your donations. Don't be a fool. Or if you don't want to get it, let me get it for you. I told him, unfortunately, I can't do it. It's unethical. For somebody to give you a receipt and then you feel whatever you want, it means you are participating in unethical. I said, "But how are you going to get your money? You are not getting a house quickly. You will lose the money. Every month you are losing 1/3 of your salary." I said, if I don't have a house, the organization demands I must be renting a house to get the money. Then that money is not my money. In fact, I remember one evening he took time after work to give me almost an hour to persuade me. He was a great friend. We had been together in the university, just to show me the foolishness of insisting on that kind of ethics. And he finally he told me, "I give up on you. You are too far of a fool for me to continue with you." Now, the point is, it didn't take many months after that for me to get a maisonette in Nairobi West, and I started living in it. So I got a real receipt, gave it, and I was okay. But what I'm trying to get you to understand in the story, it doesn't take you long before you face unethical behavior. Let me give you a second one. Still, we are talking about 1970s. One day, I arrived in the bank, and I arrived at about 8:15. Everybody seems to be looking at me in a strange way. They're unhappy with me. And I wondered, what could I have done wrong? They're talking about the new graduate who came. He's a fool. I don't know what I'm a fool about. And nobody was telling me exactly what the problem is. But around towards 11 o'clock, one of them came and said, "Young man, why did you report us to management?" I said, "How did I report anybody to management? I can't do that." He said, "Do you remember that register you signed in the morning?" "Yes." "What time did you write you arrived?" "Exactly the time I arrived." "What time did you arrive?" 8:15. "Do you realize anybody else who came after you had to write 8:15? Because nobody comes after 8:15, because they used to write, when you arrive at 8, you write 8 o'clock. Even people arrive at 9 or write 8 o'clock. So nobody arrives late. But now I had to force everybody who came after me to register that he has come late. They were totally fed up with me. And the guy was telling me, "You must stop, young man, you must stop it." I said, "But I can't. Pray for me that I never come late again. Because even next time I come late, I cannot lie about such a matter. I mean, why would I need to lie? I know I came late. My intention is not to report you. I wish there is a method you can go around me. But of me, I'll always tell the truth." So what you're saying is, living an ethical life will be a challenge in Kenya. I'm looking at the chat room to see whether there is... Emily, can you read them for me? Is there anybody who has given their story? Emily, would you like to unmute?
Okay, I can. Let me see them. Good.
Yeah, so that we can see what the other stories are. I've given mine.
I think I'm the only one who's given so far, so I'll quickly tell them myself.
Okay.
The first is a very simple one, a police block. In this case, it was actually in Zanzibar during Ramadan, and my wife was pregnant, and luckily we had a bottle of water in the car, but we were stopped for a non-existing traffic offense and threatened with a $150 fine. I asked him for the traffic code that he was waving at me with, and gave him my driving license and settled in and started reading the traffic code and read that for 2 hours, waiting for my driving license to come back. And after 2 hours, he got fed up with us. He gave me my driving license back, waved us on the way. We were stopped less and less in Zanzibar, but on the way back to the airport on the last day of our time in Zanzibar, we were stopped again by the same cop. And on the way to the airport, you have very little time, so the delay would have been difficult. But he looked into the window, he says, "It's today you're going back to Kenya, eh? Say hi to Kibaki, go on your way." So we were good. And the second one was actually also Tanzania, where we had to actually return a number of valuable client contracts back to the client. We had won the contracts, everything, but at the time there was for us no honest way in obtaining a research permit without hiring a consultant at inflated rates who's affiliated to the relevant authority. And so we gave back the contract to the clients. That was a painful and a bigger one, but yes, also worked.
Okay. Emily, take over.
Hi, there's not many. There's one who said, David Njuguna, he says, "I know of someone who paid some fees to get the retirement benefits in bulk rather than in a month installments, as is the case."
That one is one that fell into the temptation. I really wanted one where somebody won. In other words, they never fell into temptation. But Jogona, thank you very much for showing us one, and hope that nobody tries to learn to copy them. Anybody else? You can unmute and give you a story if you don't want to write it down.
Yeah, I can just tell mine is too long to type in there.
Yes.
But it was just last year when I went to South Sudan, and normally the processing we used to get what they call the alien ID right straight from the airport. But at this particular point, the officials started asking me for a work permit, which I honestly told them that was not the case. And even from the embassy, the only thing I needed was the alien ID. And so they insisted that since I don't have it, I need to pay $100. And I just stood there and reiterated my former visits to South Sudan, and that was not required at all. I think they got tired of me just being stubborn. And eventually some Chinese came and they were being given, I could just see them handing over $100 each, and they're told to move on. And so I just stood there like a fool, and eventually they just told me, "What are you doing here? Just go for your visa." So I was happy. I just went for my visa. I didn't have to pay any extra money, but it was a tough situation. So like you rightly said, we face these situations every day. At times you feel like you're almost giving in and you want to just pay that bribe to get on with your life. Thank you.
Susan, let me ask you a question. When you came back to Kenya, did you tell that story to your family?
No, I told it to my colleague, not my family.
The point is, you are creating stories you are proud to give. If you give in, Susan, are you likely to let anybody know that you are corrupt?
No. No, definitely not.
Yeah, so you tend to, and that's what the message I want to deliver here. That if you become unethical, You may gain financially, but you condemn yourself to a psychological torture for the rest of your life. Anyway, we are going to start by looking at the introduction, answering the question, what is ethics and what is integrity? Then after that, we are going to look at why ethics and integrity are important. Then at the third stage, we'll look at why ethical behavior is important. Number 4, why do companies behave unethically? Number 5, see an overview of the ISOMA code and MSRI principles. Number 6, ethical issues in research, and look at a few of them. And then consequences and violations of ethical standards. Now, in the time we have available, it will not be possible to actually spend a lot of time on it. But please understand that unethical decisions and actions in research work has potential to inflict great harm. First of all, to you as an individual, which is what I've been emphasizing in the introduction, but it could also affect your business. But it would also be wider, because the moment you do something unethical, you have given permission to your children and others who hear about it to also become unethical. The moment you start your crowd and you are not ethical, you make everybody else ethical and comfortable. So it makes it difficult for them to practice. So we are condemning every one thing. We are condemning ourselves to unethical. Now, I remember somebody asking me, Mr. Nganga, the police normally don't ask for too much. You can give them 100 shillings. They allow you along the way. Why would you allow yourself, like Jasper did, to lose? You are a busy man working for a multinational. How do you allow yourself to spend a whole hour waiting on a policeman? And all he's asking is 100 shillings. And I told him for 2 reasons. Number 1, from then onwards, I can never talk about being unethical. Because inside myself, and nobody else knows, I know I'm lying. Number 2, the moment I give him 100 shillings, he now stopped planning his life on his salary. He now thinks that people owe him. And if you have been on a Kenyan road, you know. The police don't beg your money. They think it is their money. When you don't give them, they get very unhappy with you. Because they have we, the corrupt people, have given them the chance to make sure that they don't look at your salary. They live on corrupt money. So anytime you give money unethically, you are encouraging the community to become unethical. So think of yourself, think of your business, but more important, remember the kind of heritage you are leaving to your community. You know, researchers need to not only focus on how to realize their research goals, but I would like to encourage you to also look at ethical limits in the pursuit of such goals. It is critical that the actions and decisions of researchers, first of all, must be illegal and ethical. Some unethical behavior may not be illegal anyway. But you must always do legal things in addition to ethical things. But what is ethics? We are saying that ethics refers to a well-founded standards of right and wrong that prescribe what humans ought to do, usually in terms of rights, obligations, benefits of society, fairness, or specific virtues. That's what we are talking about when we talk about ethics. Because we are talking about principles of right and wrong, which individuals acting as free moral agents use to make choices to guide your behavior. So if you have moral beliefs, they will lead you to good ethics. Some of the fundamental questions of ethics include, is that right? Is what you are doing fair? Is what you did just? Whatever your situation is. If you answer no to any one of those, then don't do it. Where does ethics matter in your life? You know, ethics and legality are not the same for an action. Can be fully legal. You are not breaking any law, but it's still unethical. Let me give an example. Violating confidentiality in a research project. You do not break any law. There's no law in the country that says you have to say it, but you are in breach of an ethical principle. Nobody may ever discover. You cannot be taken to a court of law. So it's not illegal, but it's actually unethical. So that's why we are not discussing just legality. We are discussing ethics. You know, ethics behavior requires integrity. In other words, people of integrity, their behavior will be ethical. But you can see they are not exactly the same, integrity and ethics. Integrity is the internal system of principles which will guide you to this ethical behavior. When we are acting with integrity, we do what is right, even when no one is watching us. Because ethical behavior is what people see. But integrity has nothing to do with outsiders. It is you that decides on that. You know, integrity includes honesty, objectivity, compassion, even dependability. What about generosity, kindness, loyalty, maturity, respect? All those are the kind of behavior that show you have integrity, trust, wisdom, and we could actually go on. But I want to emphasize the word integrity comes from the word integer. If you remember when you were in school, you are told 1.5 is not an integer. You are told 3/4 is not an integer. An integer is a whole number. So when you talk about integrity, we are talking about wholeness. A man of integrity is a man who has wholeness. What do we mean? He is the same person everywhere. He has such integrity. His life is integrated. Who he is to his wife is who he is to his boss. Who he is to a house girl is who he is to the general manager. To him, he is the same person everywhere because he operates on the basis of an internal control system. So he is oneness. Have you met people who are good to one person and evil to another person? Who are generous to one person and they cannot be generous? It's not an internal system. So that's why you can have pretended ethical behavior, but you cannot have pretended integrity. It will be important to understand integrity is the internal system. Integer, one. Integrity, oneness. You are one person all the same. And that means we can predict you because you cannot be tomorrow. I keep saying people of integrity have a very easy time. They don't even have to have a good memory. If I ask you who was your father, and you create some funny person. Oh, my father was a teacher. Now, then 2 years later, I ask you, what did you say your father was? You have to keep asking, what did I tell Nganga? Because obviously, you don't know whether I'm remembering or not. Now, but people of integrity don't even require a good memory. Because even if you wake up from sleep, they'll just tell you, my father was a teacher. It's not something they are formulating. They always tell the truth. And that's why the people of integrity have a very simple life to live. Both ethics and integrity spring from values, however. Values are basic beliefs about conditions and situations which have considerable importance and meaning to the members of society. So what are your values? Your values are the ones who will lead you to integrity, and your integrity will give you ethical behavior. Values are your deep-seated beliefs. Values are your moral compass in life. They're the ones who tell you, hey, don't move that way. Values are not to be compromised. In other words, values are non-negotiable convictions. Non-negotiable convictions. If you behave outside your values, outside your convictions, you suffer from what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. So you have a lot of difficulty actually going on. You become uncomfortable when you operate outside. Have you faced a situation at work that either conflicted with or required you to compromise your own values? How did you react? Looking at it now, do you think you should have reacted differently? Your values are internal. And sometimes you feel like in order to keep my job or in order to win this client, I must compromise. When you compromise, do you realize the discomfort? What have we covered so far? We have said what ethics are. We have also talked about what integrity is. And you have also talked about what values are. And you have said all of them are important. Values is what will give you integrity. Integrity is what will give you good ethical behavior. You know, for organizations, We can say that ethics are important because of reputation. You know, it preserves the interest and reputation of the organization industry. Once we hear one of the MSR agents has a funny story, that story sounds like good stories don't go quickly. Bad stories spread like fire. Your reputation can be destroyed in a day. And you know what? One of the most important assets of an organization is reputation. It's the one that gives you contracts. It's the one that makes you win tenders. It's the one that makes you exist. When you lose that reputation, you are gone. And even if it is your messenger who becomes unethical, the whole organization will lose reputation. What about trust? It keeps our biggest competitor at bay, not doing research because of doubting its value. You know, here we are not talking about competing between organizations. It's because people say, what the use of research? They are not true. They just, no, don't bother with the polling. They are all made up stories. So, even an organization that would have benefited from your research, you lose the money, all of you, not just one agency. All research organizations are going to lose business because people no longer feel like they can employ research. What about public interest? It prevents harm to the general public, and I've referred to that many times. And then you have reduced exposure yourself as a business. It protects an organization from consequences of unethical employees and competitors. If your employees are ethical, you have reduced exposure. What about the bottom line? It leads to better results in the long run. In the initial stages, you may lose a few contracts. But once people know you can be trusted, work will flow your direction. Didn't I tell you that we have such an ethical industry, an ethical country, that when you discover the ethical, you will never move away from him. Even when his prices are higher, you keep with him. You know, the other benefit is employee attraction and retention. Having an ethical environment attracts everybody wants to work for that organization. Oh, that organization, they cannot steal your money. That organization, you will be thought to be a good man because you are working for an ethical organization. So people want to work with you. Then, an ethical environment could lead to loss of talented staff. Those who are already inside. If you start becoming unethical, you will lose your best talent. You know, people who have no good talent will stay with you if you lack integrity. Because they can't apply for a job. They are unable to get work elsewhere. The moment people are uncomfortable with the way the organization is behaving, the first people to lose are the talented ones because they know they can command a market. It creates an environment in which employees can act in ways consistent with their values. And so it will attract people and people will be happy to work there. What about as an individual? It is good for your peace of mind, your clear conscience. It keeps in you a job. But most importantly, it will keep you out of jail. Because when finally, and they say the days of a thief are 40, that means they have a time limit. You may stay a long time not discovering your unethical behavior. When you finally discovered, you may be a guest that commit a prison. Why do people behave unethically anyway? Knowing all I have said so far, why do people still behave unethically? You know, human nature, we must admit, we are born with a weakness. And they keep saying nobody is perfect. Once you enter into that gospel, you find it easier to become unethical. Another thing people say is, everyone does it. I'm not the only one. That means please understand why I'm unethical. Another one say, it works. People do have big cars and houses, basically unethical. If I want a big car, I must also become unethical. Another argument of unethical people, you will not get caught. Nobody will ever know. In Kenya, you can bribe the police. But most likely, the reason people opt for unethical behavior is a sign of laziness. Because life of integrity is hard work. Doing the right thing takes more time and more effort. So that's why you look for shortcuts. You're just a lazy guy. But others, simply it is convenient. And you make a saving because you are trying to give, to charge something without value. That way you seem to think you have made money. And of course, people say that you are stupid if you don't do it. I have to make a choice for my family. You know, I come from a poor background. I'm under pressure to make life. How do I fail to make a quick buck? And anyway, if truth be told, when I give policeman 100 shillings on the road, nobody's losing. I told you earlier you'll be losing because we are creating a climate where the police will now force everybody to ask to give money. I'm not being paid too little. I'm being paid too little. My employer is so mean. If I don't do corrupt things, I cannot survive on my current salary. It is my right to take what is due to me. So I'll steal even from my employer. Those are the arguments people have. But food for thought. Do you know someone who, because of refusing to compromise their integrity, ended up losing all opportunity? Do you remember people who were fired? Do you remember people who lost their promotion? Do you remember a TED that was lost because of lack of integrity? Do you know a person who got fired, deregistered, or went to jail for compromising professional ethics? If you think you deserve more, which of course could be true, are you likely to get more with high ethics or compromise ethics? Who is likely to get a promotion and get a higher salary? You can't fix a lack of fairness or justice by you becoming like them and becoming unethical. Integrity, please note, and trust are easily lost, but it will be very difficult to regain them. So don't even do it once, because you may lose it for good. You know, a market research project could be, we were talking about that on doctors or major private or public hospitals. The general introduction of respondent anonymity and confidentiality was given to all respondents. The client requested for the doctor's details as part of the data collection delivery, and this was provided by the research agency. A research study was intended to deeply into the motives and shopping habits of adults purchasing explicit adult materials. The research director authorized the use of hidden cameras and recorders to capture movements, as well as for interviews to pose as fellow customers. Very unethical, but you can justify it. Please note, the ELSAMA code assists you to deal with all we have been discussing. The code is designed primarily as a framework for self-regulation. You want to ensure you yourself, as a person, as an organization, are ethical. So the code will help you. Key fundamentals of this code, ELSAMA code. Market researchers shall conform to all relevant national and international laws. So if you don't, you are unethical. Number 2, market researchers shall behave ethically and shall not do anything which might damage the reputation of market research. Number 3, market researchers shall take special care when carrying out research among children and young people. Number 4, respondents' cooperation is voluntary and must be based on adequate and, please note, not misleading information about the general purpose and nature of the project. When the agreement to participate is being obtained, and all such statements shall be honored. So it's important that people are doing it voluntarily. Number 5, the rights of respondents as private individuals shall be respected by market researchers, and they shall not be harmed or adversely affected as the direct result of cooperating in market research project. So you can see ethics will mean you protect your clients. Number 6, market research shall never allow personal data, in a connected market research project to be used for any purpose other than the one that the market research intended. Number 7, market researchers shall ensure that projects and activities are designed, carried out, reported, and documented. Number 1, accurately. Number 2, transparently. Number 3, objectively. And finally, number 8, market researchers shall conform to the accepted principles of fair competition. And those are the principles behind which we get our code of ethics. You know, the code specifically states that it's acceptable for members. My thing is covered.
I'll jump in for you, John.
Okay, can you read it for me? It's acceptable?
It specifically states what is acceptable and not acceptable for members of a profession.
Yeah, I'm unable to read the word not acceptable for members. Yeah. Next, establishes a framework for expected professional behavior of members. Clearly states the responsibilities of its members. You need to go to the ethics to see that. Promotes high standards of practice. And the code also provides members with a specific occupational description identity. And the code also provides a framework for dealing with professional misconduct among members of a profession. You know, the ethical principles in MSR code, once I commit to this code of ethics, I commit to comply with the following principles. Number 1, you commit, when you sign it, to reputation. MSR members and representatives, regardless of experience or position, ensure that their actions reflect positively upon the research industry. Neither MSR members nor representatives undertake an action that will bring the reputation of the research industry into question or as dispute. So you are committing yourself to protecting the reputation of the industry. Number 2, respect for rule. You are committing yourself to respect for rules. MSR members and representatives act in accordance with all applicable laws, regulations, and industry standards. No members or representatives undertakes or assist another to undertake any action which violates applicable laws, regulations, or industry standards. Number 3, you are committing yourself to respect for persons. MSRA members and representatives ensure that their dealings with others foster mutual trust and respect. They do not behave in a manner that is prejudiced, discriminatory, or even harassing. Number 4, you are committing yourself to confidentiality. MSRA members and representatives protect all information that is sensitive, or confidential, or private from misuse. MSRA member or representative only uses or discloses such information for the purpose for which it was collected, or a permissible secondary use, unless disclosure is otherwise required by law. You also commit yourself to honesty. MSRA members and representatives are truthful, even when that may be difficult or possibly result in you are losing business. You still remain honest. You also commit yourself, number 6, to fairness. MSRA members and representatives conduct business in a manner that is objective and impartial. Fairness requires managing one's own experience and self-interest to ensure that biases, or conflicts do not compromise professional conduct. Number 7, conflicts of interest. MSRA members and representatives are sensitive to potential conflict and conflicts of interest and or remove themselves from the transaction. Given that it's already 3 o'clock, I'll leave you to read the details. The next thing you are committing yourself is competency. Number 9, you are committing yourself responsibility for actions. Number 10, you are committing yourself to political neutrality. Number 11, you are committing yourself to respect for intellectual property. And number 12, you are committed not only to not being corrupt, but to preventing corruption. You will not allow corruption to happen around you and then claim, it's not me, it's not me. You commit yourself to preventing corruption. You know, in applying ethical issues in research, researchers have a strong moral and professional obligation to do it at all times and in all situations. In the research process, ethics focuses on the application of ethical standards. In there, you can be unethical when planning the study, so be ethical. You can also be unethical in the data collection analysis, so be ethical. You can also be unethical in dissemination of the results. You could also be unethical in use of the research results in the social context. For example, in the development of social programs, policies, laws, etc. So you should protect research participants from harm. So if people are participating in your project, ensure they don't suffer physical harm, psychological harm, legal harm, or even professional harm. Participation must be voluntary, and we saw that earlier. But also must be informed, voluntary and informed consent. There must be no coercion. Deception and lying must not be used to and is not acceptable. What about privacy, anonymity, and confidentiality? Those are things that you must observe. Financial issues and sponsored research. Undue influence by the sponsor of the research must be resisted. Even if you are sponsored, tell the truth. Follow the rules. Dissemination of finding, authoring or doctoring findings. People don't want to know what you think. They want to know what you found out. So to give what you think rather than what you found out is unethical. What about in these times of COVID-19? We added this after talking about COVID-19. We have just had a year of this problem. COVID-19 has had great impact on the practice of research with the new opportunities and challenges. So one of the things we need to think about with COVID is, what are some of these challenges and opportunities that you feel have been brought by COVID? What are some of the potential ethical challenges that COVID-19 presents to research work? How can these challenges be overcome? You know, temptation to take shortcuts or cut corners are now more justified by the rules of COVID, keep distance, cover up. You can't even be recognized when you have covered your mouth and nose. It might tempt you to be unethical, to be tempted. Or temptation to do anything to make ends meet. Corona has come with reduced work. So now, although earlier you are ethical, now you feel, it's too expensive. What will my children eat? Another thing that COVID may have brought is temptation not to get research permit approval, since much research work is being done online and the authorities may not know. So since I'm not physically, how would anybody ever discover I'm doing this research? So do I really have to follow the law? Is that a possible question during this period of COVID? Or maintaining privacy, anonymity of online participants? Because these are not people you have seen, but they are still clients. You might be tempted to harm them because after all, they never saw you. They don't even know you. What about getting informed consent, like obtaining parental consent online? You are researching among children, and they can talk to you. So must you get parental consent? Or appropriateness of accessing digital data or online profiles for research purposes. Will you be still right? We have run out of time, but I would have wanted us to discuss deception, cheating on a questionnaire, sharing of confidential information, invented or inflated costs, hidden services to the competition. Any researcher can be tempted in all this. What about plagiarism? Not acknowledging where you got the information from. What about theft and asset fraud? What about kickbacks in exchange for favors, for information, etc.? What about nepotism? What about identity fraud, pretending you are not who you are? What about hidden outsourcing? I'm sure you understand what that is. You are claiming to do something, but you actually outsourced it. What about double employment? You are working in one place, but you're also being paid another. What about tax evasion? All these are issues. If you are really going to regard yourself as ethical, you must tackle. Any others you have come across? Which of these happens or even has happened within MSRA members? What were the consequences when it happened? Consequences to the individual or consequences to the industry, the MSRA industry? What are the standards? What are the consequences that when you don't keep to ethical standards? To yourself, you know, it could lead you to disciplinary action. I told you the days of Adhiv are 40. You know, it could lead you to loss of employment. It could also attract legal sanction. You could end up in committee. You could be prosecuted. But most importantly, please understand it will bring public embarrassment when caught. Your wife wonders, how could you embarrass me like that? Everybody's talking about how my husband stole. It robs you of peace of mind, my friend, and will certainly be a restless soul. You know, restriction from future research jobs. Nobody wants to deal with you. You get less done. Hiding your steps in time is time intensive. You'll be trying to hide something. You always need to watch your back in case, have they discovered? Might they know about this? Somebody asks you a question and you raise your eyebrows. Or did somebody tell my boss? All these will be things you suffer when you are unethical. What about for your organization? Again, we have seen that your organization could lose reputation, dependency on ethical agents and clients. Because you see, once you have cheated with you, I can call on you, I can shout you and report you. So you can almost do anything I want you to do. Blackmail. Risk of discovery, fines, penalties, legal costs, prosecution for your organization. What about lack of trust among your team? Because if you can lie to the client, how do I know you're not lying to me? Say, no, I'll give you a promotion next year. But you have just lied to a client. How will I believe in you? Detrimental to company or culture for sure. Lack of trust by stakeholders. And then less business, less profit, higher uncertainty once the 40 days are over. Suspension, expulsion, certainly from MSRA. Once MSRA knows, you will not continue being a member. You know, objections to this is what we saw earlier. People say, but you know, with COVID, there's a lot of inflation. Overwork during evenings, night and weekdays, increase in responsibilities, additional qualification courses and degrees and not paid, lack of perspective for career growth, seniority. I have been with this company for a long time. Fairness, others earn the same or more or less. Why should I be ethical? For your organization, I work more than my colleagues and I'm not rewarded for that. Or I deserve a share of the company's positive performance and I'm not getting. These are the complaints that will encourage an ethical culture. I have been frugal when my company was drawn down. Now I should be rewarded now that the company is doing well. I hear that people elsewhere earn more. Management has no idea what it takes to do my job. They are not rewarding me according to the complexity of my job. But I still want to raise my income and I want to be ethical. How do the two go together? Why I wait for my next pay rise with the upcoming wage review and give you a case as to why you should be given a high salary. Or I learn how to negotiate for pay rise. And Google is your friend. Negotiate. Or I document my contribution to my agency and how these have grown significantly to prove that I cannot be paid the same salary. Or I explain to management my contribution to the company, the improvements and milestones booked, and discuss a pay rise with them. Or I discuss with the management the expectations of my performance and how I can increase my value to our clients and to my agents if only I'm given more empowered, more. Or I pressure management to tell me where I stand. Is there something I can improve so that I can get a promotion? Or I also consider non-monetary returns, extra training, extra responsibilities, more flexibility. If all these fails, I look for a higher paying job where my skills are valued appropriately. Instead of being unethical, move houses, go to another place, but don't become unethical, because by becoming unethical, you'll not just harm your organization, you'll harm yourself. Love yourself enough not to be involved in unethical behavior. You know, how can I change my work practices? I self-examine what I'm currently doing and how I'm behaving. If in this discussion you can see there's somewhere you fall short, take yourself for a meeting. Evaluate yourself, examine yourself. Number 2, examine what my peers, colleagues, and seniors are doing and how they are behaving. Next, evaluate if how my actions are impacting negatively or positively on the company. Next, openly discuss with management and even your peers what you have established from the above, the 3 points assessment. Then set out your goals on behaving ethically and consciously and willingly implement my goals. Here we are suggesting it's possible to be unethical without realizing. This meeting is to help you to assess yourself. And where you don't measure up, don't beat yourself too much. Regret about the past. Begin a new way of living. Food for thought. The punishment for unethical behavior will always be harsher than any rewards for unethical behavior. The rewards for ethical behavior will always be higher than the rewards of being unethical. So in our conclusion, what have we been discussing? Ethics is important at your personal level, but also at your employer's level, and even at industry level. We are asking you, have we witnessed or come across unethical practice within this profession? If so, point it out. You need to report such practices to relevant organs or authority, even if you do it confidentially. Because when you let them go down, the whole industry will go down. For your good and the good of your employer and industry, point out where underhand unethical behavior is happening. However, members will only feel bold to do this if they know that action will be taken against the offender. And MSRA commits itself to acting on the offender. I don't know whether you have enough time to ask me questions. I hand over the meeting back to Emily.